Hi everyone, welcome to episode 9 of The Liberal Conservative. I'm your host, Yudenia Mesa, and today our episode is called Who is Our Modern Day Schindler? So there's a haunting question echoing through our streets, maybe our generation. And that is, who will history remember today in 2025 as our Schindler? Or maybe even our Churchill or our FDR? Who is brave enough to defy the system, not from the comfort of a podium, but from the fire pit of truth, risk, and sacrifice? So this isn't 1940s G-side or Holocaust. And it doesn't always have to be blatant and in your face or wear a swastika, although the white supremacists are very emboldened under a Trump administration currently in the United States. Sometimes it wears a suit and sits on a Senate Intelligence Committee. Sometimes it signs off on bombs. Sometimes it signs off on silence. So today we ask, who is really fighting fascism and who is just cosplaying resistance for likes, book deals, and MSNBC airtime? So I'm going to say that the majority of our government, Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, is cosplaying and not truly fighting fascism. And we can see that play out on our screens every day. We can see that playing out in the New York primary, where Mondami won the primary by 56%, a really high number. And the establishment Democrats are fighting against him harder than they're fighting against the fascist and the fascist regime in the White House. That should tell you everything that you need to know about the so-called heroes of the Democratic Party who pretend to be for the people, but are really beholden to the same donor class that pays the Republicans. So let's move on to segment 1 of this series, of this episode, the vacuum of leadership. So the left's polished puppets. Today's Democratic Party is not the party of FDR. Most of its leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, unfortunately, Kamala Harris, the Clintons, the Obamas, Pete Buttigieg, are gatekeepers of the system, not challengers of it. They perform just enough outrage to keep the donor class happy, but when real leaders emerge, like Mondami, they get iced out, and these people that I just mentioned really work overtime to ice them out. They also ice out, let's say, Bernie Sanders in 2016. They continuously ice out AOC, like Nancy Pelosi just did for a powerful committee seat, replacing her or, rooting for someone against her who ended up dying a couple of months later. Every time someone tries to change the game, the referees, Democrat or Republican, call foul. So what is the false resistance? It's performative progressivism, and it's killing us. Our modern crisis demand modern heroes, but instead we get cable news celebrities dressed in resistance. When war crimes are being live streamed and child poverty is rising and immigrants are being detained and citizens are being detained, Chuck Schumer tweets, and celebrities maybe release another, vinyl variant or go on some, Paris Fashion Week with some extreme outfits, right? Because they're all just gestures trying to distract you from the atrocities that are taking place all over the world that they're inadvertently supporting or on purpose supporting. Many Democrats say the right things, but vote to fund ICE, weapons for authoritarian regimes, and mass surveillance. You know how you can spot a fraud? Watch who they try to silence when someone really starts telling the truth. Our artists are braver than our politicians. Yes, some of them are. When art fights back, someone like Jane Fonda, who's 83 and got arrested multiple times for protesting climate inaction. Harry Belafonte spent his life funding civil rights work while the FBI harassed him. Meanwhile, most modern celebrities, they post black squares and then move on or stay silent, right? As much as I hate to say this because I love her so much, but her silence around really important issues is becoming very deafening and almost inexcusable. And, although Taylor Swift donated to LGBTQIA plus causes, imagine if she used her platform the way that Jane Fonda used hers. Beyonce is the same thing, right? She's going around the world touring, talking, forcing Cowboy Carter down everyone's throats, basically, right? Like calling it like a country album, come rain or come shine, no matter what. Her husband paid for that Grammy. No one's going to change my mind about that. And that's it. But silence on causes, silent on real action. How about Oprah and Gayle King? Like, what's up with that? One is a self-proclaimed astronaut. No, you're not, girl. Sit down. And the other one is just literally supporting, like fascists, basically, right? Like going to Jeff Bezos' wedding. They both went, but we don't really have like artists that risk it all. And when the ones that we do, we then call them crazy or, old or senile. The ones that really can make a difference don't. The real resistance, though, is building. And it's us. We are the parallel structures that need to be built in order to affect change. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out also to Cynthia Nixon, who is from, if you guys don't know, she is best known for her roles in Sex and the City and in Just Like That, playing Miranda Hobbs. She is someone who uses her platform consistently for calling out inequalities and just the atrocities that are going on around the world. So is Angelina Jolie. You got to give a shout out to those girls too. Women, of course. When institutions fail, movements are born. The true Schindler, Churchills, and FDRs of our time may not be in the office. They're building outside of it. Citizen journalists on TikTok documenting voter suppression. Community organizers offering abortion care rides and food programs. Tech entrepreneurs creating uncensored, uncorrupted platforms for truth and collaboration, like Mark Cuban. Whistleblowers risking prison to tell the truth, Chelsea Manning and Daniel Hale. We're not waiting for a hero anymore. We're becoming them because we have to. Silence is collusion. We see you, the millionaires who fund causes in the dark but won't speak publicly. The corporate CEOs who know Trump is dangerous but keep donating for tax breaks. The liberal celebrities, and I put liberal in air quotation marks, who make speeches at award shows but say nothing when actual activists get arrested or killed. You want to be on the right side of history? Then get loud and get bold. Because if you wait until it's safe, it's already too late. History is written by the brave, not the blue-checked, not the blue-tied, but the ones who speak truth when it's unpopular, when it's inconvenient, and when it's dangerous. Our Schindler may not wear a tie. She may wear eyeliner and combat boots. Our Churchill might live stream his resistance from a basement in Minneapolis. And our FDR might be a single mom who just filed to run for office. The names won't be the same, but the courage will be. And when the books are written, may they say, we showed up, we told the truth, we refused to kneel, even when the world was burning. And I want to touch on one thing that I think is really important to keep in mind. because people have no idea what real leadership even looks like anymore. But back in 1933, the Great Depression had Americans on the brink of collapse. And what did Franklin Delano Roosevelt do on day one? He shut the banks down. He closed them for 3 days. Can you imagine that happening right now? If Joe Biden shut down Chase and Bank of America for 72 hours, Fox News would start foaming at the mouth. The word communism would trend for a week. But FDR wasn't trying to steal your money. He was trying to save it. He knew panic would destroy what was left of our financial system. So he gave the country 3 days to breathe. Then he created the FDIC, which Donald Trump is now trying to dismantle. So your deposits were insured. So working class Americans wouldn't get robbed by Wall Street collapses again. You can thank a Democrat for the reason your checking account isn't gone every time there's a recession. Now, let's be really clear. FDR inherited a broken country after 3 consecutive Republican presidents in a row: Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. 3 presidents who worshiped the millionaire class, gutted regulations, and told poor people to pull themselves up by bootstraps while their boots were being stolen. Sound familiar? Because it should, because that's where we are again. Except now, our so-called Democratic leaders aren't even creating new safety nets or bold solutions. They're just managing the decline. They show up for a photo op at strikes, but vote for military budgets and surveillance. They give you slogans instead of systemic change. That's not leadership. That is theater, my friends. We don't have an FDR right now. We have a bunch of cable news mannequins funded by the same donor class that funds the GOP, which is actively dismantling every branch of government and centralizing our government at the executive branch. Before we ask who today's FDR is, let's remember who the original FDR was up against. Because history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And right now, we are living the remix. Let's go back to the 1920s. 3 Republican presidents, like I mentioned, in a row, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, took turns handing the U.S. economy over to monopolists and millionaires, like the Rockefellers and the Carnegies. They slashed taxes for the wealthy, deregulated banks, and turned the federal government into a concierge service for robber barons. Warren G. Harding filled his cabinet with friends and cronies, literally called the Ohio Gang, who were caught in scandal after scandal. Ever heard of the Teapot Dome? That was a straight-up oil bribery scheme involving U.S. Navy petroleum reserves. Harding died in office. Some say of a heart attack, some whisper it was guilt. Then came Calvin Coolidge, a man who famously said, "The business of America is business." And he meant it. Coolidge cut the top tax rate from 73% to 25% and vetoed every bill aimed at helping struggling farmers. He believed the free market would take care of everything. Sound familiar? Trump just said the other day that he wants farmers to take ownership of the people that work for him. I mean, call me crazy, but it sounds like he's calling for slaves. Call me crazy, but that's what it sounds like. Because instead of the federal government, helping our farmers, he just wants to return to slavery so that he can keep all the money and the farmers can also do the same. But farmers aren't going to do that, by the way. Just FYI. Then we have Herbert Hoover. Took office and doubled down. When the 1929 stock market crash hit, Hoover told Americans it was a temporary setback and urged people to rely on voluntary cooperation instead of government relief. Translation, you're on your own, kid. Meanwhile, these men lived like kings. They weren't in bread lines. They weren't selling apples on street corners. They were dining with oil executives and golfing while 25% of Americans lost their jobs and nearly 10,000 banks collapsed. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck. It was policy that they made, and it was always designed to protect them. When FDR took office in 1933, the country was wrecked. He shut down the banks for 3 days, not to punish Americans, but to protect them from a total collapse. He created the FDIC. He launched the New Deal. He gave people jobs, infrastructure, dignity, and he did it by going to war with the same millionaire class that funded those Republican disasters before him. You want to know what courage looks like? FDR once said, "They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred." Try to imagine Chuck Schumer saying that about AIPAC or Citadel. He couldn't even fake it if he tried. This pattern repeats every generation. This cycle, this sabotage and salvation loop has been replaying for decades. Republicans crash the economy, Democrats come in and clean it up, and by the time the mess is cleaned, voters forget who caused it. Examples, I have so many of them. 1980s Reaganomics. This guy was atrocious. We are still paying for bad Reagan policy today. I am going to venture to say with 99% certainty that the reason that we are so entrenched in fascism right now is thanks to Reagan opening the door to these people. Reaganomics explodes the deficit, guts unions. Clinton comes in and stabilizes, but compromises too much. In 2008, Bush deregulates Wall Street, the Great Recession. Obama inherits economic ruin. Then he does bailouts, which also, guess what he does? Compromise too much. In 2016, Trump cuts tax for the rich, wrecks pandemic response, balloons the deficit. Biden walks in with COVID, inflation, and global chaos. And now they've run the same play again in 2024, ruin the middle class, blame the Democrats, and run on fear. Modern Republicans are just the 1920s in spray tan. And that's bad spray tan if you're looking at Donald Trump's spray tan. Donald Trump is Coolidge. Harding and Hoover rolled into one 90 or 95 IQ person and dipped in narcissism. Because, of course, the IQ thing. He's financially incoherent, obviously 7 bankruptcies, can't explain basic policy or even speak basic English, let's be real, and surrounds himself with cronies who also have the same issues he has, low IQ, very, not intelligent, whose only loyalty is to themselves and to profit. He bragged about bankruptcies like they were trophies. He ran a fake university. He gave billionaires a $2 trillion tax cut while telling you he was fighting for truck drivers. And just like that in the 1920s, the collapse that followed didn't touch him. He golfed through COVID, he downplayed the deaths, and now he's got a legal fund paid for by poor conservatives who still believe he's one of them. Because let's not forget that the most important thread of our makeup in this country is racism, and poor conservatives will vote for a racist before even their own well-being any day of the week. Call it what it is. This isn't politics. This is looting. It's a long, long game con. The modern GOP has perfected the art of wrecking the economy for everyone except the elite. Then they blame wokeness or immigrants or groomers or gay people or trans people for the fallout. And our democratic leadership, they manage the ashes instead of fighting the arsonists. People love to ask, how did we get there? Or how did we get here? But the better question is, let's not forget who was allowed to vote while we were getting here. In the 1920s, when 3 Republican presidents in a row were handing the U.S. economy over to oil tycoons and bankers, the electorate looked very, very different. Let's not forget, Black Americans were being terrorized, lynched, and systemically suppressed across the South. Women had just barely gotten the right to vote in 1920, and even then, only white women benefited from its practice. Indigenous people weren't even recognized as U.S. citizens until 1924, and most couldn't vote until after World War II. Asian Americans excluded from citizenship. And millions of immigrants were disenfranchised by language barriers, poll taxes, literacy tests, and outright racism. So, who was allowed to vote? Well, of course, white men, land-owning men, business class men, the exact demographic who benefited from Republican policies of deregulation, tax cuts, and corporate handouts. So it's no surprise that Warren, Harding, and Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover kept getting elected. They weren't serving the people, they were serving the voters because the people had been shut out. This is how oligarchy hides inside democracy. It rigs the rules, it controls the electorate, and then it tells you the outcome was the will of the people. So, again, who is today's modern day Churchill or FDR? It's not the cable news clones. It's the ones connecting the dots. Seeing how today's economic play mirrors yesterday's sabotage. In 2025, Trump's flagship economic plan has been a sweeping tariff regime. Retail tariffs averaging overseas are now in the high teens, with steel and aluminum at 50%, cars and 25%, the highest tariff level since the 1930s. Analysts warns the impact is extreme. Long-run GDP could shrink by 6%, wages could fall by 5%, and middle-class households will lose an estimated $22,000 over their lifetime. A dollar undermined. Markets are already reflating the alarm. The U.S. dollar has dropped 11% this year, a decline not seen since 1973. Investors have rushed out of the U.S. assets. Gold is rallying. The Aussie dollar recently hit an 8-month high, citing fiscal deficits and erratic policies. This is all the blueprint for Project 25, which is the collapse of the middle class. But it's not accidental. This project explicitly calls for repealing post-crisis consumer protections, slashing corporate and individual taxes, and shifting burdens from the wealthy to the middle class. Combine that with tariffs used to fund the government, a stealth sales tax on everything we buy, and suddenly the dollar isn't just weakening, it's being weaponized against us. History rhymes again. This is the old Republican playbook. Crash the economy, blame Democrats, run on strong leadership, tariffs create inflation, inflation shrinks wages, dollar collapses, erodes savings, vulnerability grows, discontent peaks, then new campaign cycle, new rescue. The only difference is that then FDR built the FDIC, implemented the New Deal, and regulated Wall Street. Now, Trump's plan is to dismantle protections and let corporate elites profit from our collapse. So, call to action. Who will stop this vicious cycle? This is our moment. This is your moment. Because the next dollar tumble, the next recession, the next consumer bailout, it won't come with a hero unless we create one. We need voices beyond Washington. I'm talking whistleblowers, citizens who expose the rot, boardroom descendants who refuse to bankroll it, artists, organizers, everyday patriots. History is clear. When the system collapses from self-interest, the heroes aren't elected. They're forged in resistance. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of The Liberal Conservative. And tune in next week, same time, same place. And until then, stay woke.